sorted, but I did say I would at least record this, and I can, figure out a way to do that, or maybe post it to YouTube or something like that. Okay, all right, everyone. I see one person and a bunch of black screens. So, and on my end, it's kind of awkward when I smile at black screens, but I hope you all having a good evening, okay? So, would you all like to share your screens with me? So I can see your faces when I can learn who you are as we take the study session together. Hey, Amira. Hi. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Carson. Ashley. Hey, Ashley. Okay, other people are going to debate whether they want to make their public debut. Hey, Shayna, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Okay, so you got the study guide on Friday night. Oh, before we get into all that, I just want to make sure that you all got the message too about the discussion post too. Several people in the class, as well throughout the whole university, had power outages or no internet service during, well, I guess at that time would have been Tropical Storm Sally, as she rolled through and dropped about 9 inches of rain on Columbus. So, I just felt like it would be unfair to put another stress or burden on you to have to do something else online as you're trying to catch up and work around, that storm. So we'll catch up on that discussion post later. I'd rather at this point, rather than trying to squeeze it in as a must do over the weekend or something, just let you focus on the test, okay? Let's just get through the test and then start things with Europe soon after that, and we can roll the discussion post into that. That's also why I didn't add in an additional set of lecture slides that I have already prepared, which is on economic geography of Latin America, although we're responsible for what's here in the book, on what they talk about. But generally, as you've seen with my lectures, I often add in other material or other information beyond the textbook. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, kind of understood. And that's why, so you're not missing anything at all. You didn't neglect it or anything. If I don't tell you about it, it's simply because I've decided at that moment it wasn't probably the right time for it. And it was one of those last minute executive decisions I made on Friday not to assign it, okay? And I wasn't able to get the message out to you guys until today, because I was actually helping co-present on a Zoom conference over the weekend. So I was kind of locked up with that, right?
Want to go through the ball around?
Yeah, I'll play ball.
Oh, snap.
Hi, Kaya. Let's go play ball. I have to ask how old is this kid, okay? Because my son's always up for playing ball too. He's 15. Right. So then I gave you the study guide, and I hope you've had a chance to sort of work through at least a good part of it. And what I usually do for these study sessions is open it up for questions. Sometimes students think I'm going to just go line by line and give you the answers, and they're ready to write them down and everything. I want you to work through it and ask questions about what you don't understand. And I don't always immediately jump to the answer. I like for other people to also respond to that. Caillou, how old is your kid? How
Turned 17.
How much? How old?
Just turned 17.
17. I have a 15-year-old. And so when you said you want to play ball, that's usually what I tell my son, to go outside and shoot the basketball hoops or something.
Yeah. He just moved in, or it's his first year at CSU. So I was just like, yes, son. We gonna do something later on this week. He just came in here.
Yeah, well, that's great. So anyway, you're in good company with that. Trust me. So So I try to open it up. So if others know the answer, I let them I'm sort of try to facilitate you all having a conversation as well as helping you with the answers on things that you don't know. The actual test itself will be multiple choice and true false, much like the quizzes. It'll be online, okay? There will be 50 questions, 1 point each. So the way I look at it, it's a very low stakes kind of situation. So if you miss one, it's not going to knock you down 5 points or something like that. And what's really important that you do with this, because of just security issues, you must have a lockdown browser. Are you familiar with lockdown browser? Have you done test at CSU before online?
No, I'm not.
Okay. If you go into Cougar View, there should be a message box. Let me share my screen and show you what I'm talking about. That's actually easier. Let me go into my screen here. Okay, y'all can see that, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so if I'm gonna go in and see, pretend I am a student, okay? I can go from me and I can go as one of you. If you go to assessments, I wonder if it's going to show me here, because I haven't made the test yet. Your test will always be under quizzes. It's always going to be called quiz. Let's see here. I don't see that. Okay, but if you go, well, generally what there will be is, I think what happens is once I actually set up the test, you'll see that there is a lockdown browser requirement. And you may need to go and let me see if I can find something here just on Center for Online Learning. Download the lockdown browser. Basically what it does is, for security, locks you out of having multiple windows like I'm doing right now to go quickly search up answers, right? And that means it's not as open book, right? And so, and the lockdown browser can also require a camera just to make sure you are the individual taking the test.
Right. Now, I know obviously you're talking about the lock screen, but we are having a study session. Any notes that we take down on a single piece of paper, is that allowed during the exam or nothing?
What do you mean by any notes? What are you talking about?
Like right now, I was planning on anything really specific that you said to write it down to study that even more. So I didn't know anything that we wrote down by hand, if we were allowed to use that.
You shouldn't. I mean, this is really an examination of your knowledge.
Okay.
So I would prefer that not be the case.
Okay.
Let me see, teaching resources. Well, I don't want to waste your time on it, but if you're running into difficulty, where am I? Yeah, I don't know what's in it. If you're running into difficulty with that, you let me know ASAP. The test will be open for several days, maybe like between Tuesday and Thursday evening, okay? Generally when the tests start, it's a time thing, so you can't pause it and close it out and come back into it again, okay? So you need to kind of sit down and do it in one fell swoop. So make sure that when you're ready to do the test, that you actually kind of carve out the time. I've had students in the past, well, actually last spring when we had to move online very rapidly because we were doing face-to-face classes, that they saw that there was a 2.5, 3 day period to do the test. But in their mind, they thought, oh, I can pick it up, stop, and go back and forth, and they got locked out. So just make sure that when you're ready to do it, just do it all together in one fell swoop, okay? I will post some information about Lockdown Browser on the announcements page first thing in the morning so that you have that as a resource or reference to go to if you're not sure how to do that, okay? All right, so here is, any questions about any of that stuff that I've said before we look at the study guide?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so where do we want to begin? We have a bunch of vocabulary terms, and you'll have to identify them either as the definition itself or put into kind of like a contextual framework. Like if I were to say, for example, looking here at Richter scale for earthquakes, I could have you define it, or I could just simply say, this is the measurement that was used to measure the 2010 Haitian earthquake. What is it? Richter scale, or is it, weight scale, or, geographic scale, something like that, but you would pick out Richter scale, okay? And then we have all these figures we can talk about as well, and some case studies. So where do you all want to start? What kind of questions do you have?
One of the first questions I have is, as far as the images that you have said that we need to focus on, are those going to be like, we're giving multiple choice and we have to label the maps? Are you talking like that specific on knowing them?
No, it would be more like to the effect of, like if I were to look at, let's say here, what if we went to like figure 2.4, and I have the paper book version right here. But it's this one right here of like climate vulnerability, right? I think that's the one I'm looking at, right? Extreme vulnerability, vulnerability to extreme weather, okay? All right. It would be more along the likes of, and to be honest, I haven't finished writing the test yet, so I'm just pulling this out of my head. By looking at this map, would China, France, or Greenland be more likely to experience, extreme weather events? Now, China is most vulnerable in red, right? Greenland is in yellow. It's the least likely. So you do have to have somewhat of a sense of global geography, but I'm not going to throw like a weird little country such as, it's not, I shouldn't say weird or little, because it's demeaning a whole society, isn't it? But I wouldn't expect you to know the difference between Niger and Chad in Central Africa, okay? But some of the big ones, you might know where France is, you might know where China is, or the USA or Canada or something. So it would be an effort to have you apply some geographical application to this map and kind of make an informed decision based on the criteria given to you. Okay? But I'm not up for like throwing really dangerous curveballs or anything. Okay. But I'm not trying to make it too easy either. So there's no punting to get to first base either. Okay. Okay. All right.
Oh, wait. Did we just?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This might be like a stupid question, but it's been
no stupid questions ever. Okay.
Since we took the quiz, because I'll always get primate and what is the other large one? Megacity confused.
Yep.
And I get it confused because I'll think of Mexico, and so like, Mexico is a primate city, but it would also technically be the megacity, right?
That is right. It is both. That is correct.
So then it has Mexico, and then I believe it was like Argentina, and I was like, okay, so the city is very huge, but
You're at Sao Paulo, right?
yes. And so I couldn't remember. It was really bugging me because I'm like, I see the population itself is very large, but I wasn't sure if it was like, like the capital city in terms of like political influence. And so like, that's the difference, right? That is the difference between like a primate city and like a mega city.
Right. The basic, well, there are a few things, but you're on the right track. So a primate city is exponentially larger than any other city in that country.
Okay.
So in the case of Mexico, you have Mexico City, which is, of course, the political, economic, and cultural capital of Mexico. And it has 20 million people or so. And then the next largest city is Guadalajara and has less than, 4 million people, or about 4 million people, I guess. So there's no real clear second, smaller sibling to the, that, right? Whereas if I were to use Brazil as that case study, Sao Paulo is a mega city. It's nearing 20 million people as well. But Brazil also has Rio de Janeiro with about 13 million people. Its political capital is neither one of those cities. It's Brasilia, right? So they have a federal district like DC is to us in the United States. So Sao Paulo has obviously a mega city quality to it, but it can't qualify. It will never qualify as a primate city by that definition because Rio is just right there on its heels, right?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Okay, so yes, because I was actually going to ask you if you could use Brazil as like a an example because it's so large.
Mm-hmm.
More sense.
So let me ask you, does the United States have a primate city?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I assumed it would be New York because
Okay.
like when I hear people like internationally speaking of the US, I'll always hear like New York first and then like every once and again like California, but I always assumed it would be New York, but I honestly don't think we have one.
What about the rest of the group here? Does the United States have a primate city? You win a new car if you get it right.
I was kind of thinking along the lines of California, because didn't they just have to separate California?
Well, California is a state. We're talking about a city.
Oh,
Shayna's working through it. Anyone else want to jump at it? Let me see. Oh, hold on. I think there might be somebody in the weight room. Hold on 1 second. Just let me double check this, okay? Trying to see.
I don't think the United States has a primary city
No? Why do you think not?
because we have New York, we have Los Angeles, San Francisco. We have many major cities. We don't have one city that has most of the population.
Atlanta.
We just have a bunch of super cities.
You are 100% correct, Caillou. Am I saying your name correctly, Caillou? Yes, okay. So yeah, you and Shane are on the right track. Yes, New York is a dominant city, right? No doubt about it. But our political capital is in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
We have Los Angeles and Chicago, which are right behind New York as the country's largest megacity. If you want, I would qualify New York as a megacity, but not a primate city. However, if you were to look at the United Kingdom, London is a primate city because it's the concentration of everything and it's so much bigger than the other cities. Paris, France, this is a heads up to Europe, the next chapter, right? Paris, France is a primate city because no other city compares to its size or importance. So it really kind of comes down to the idea that there's one dominant city that's the largest in the country. It may not be a mega city, but it's the largest. But yes, a primate city can be a mega city like Mexico, for example.
Okay. I think it's harder to combine. Okay, that makes more sense.
Does it make more sense now? I hope
Yes.
so. All right, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not inadvertently leaving anybody out. We have 11 people in, and sometimes people show up late, but I don't see anyone at the moment. So, okay. All right, anyone else? Let's go for something else on here. Hold on, while you're asking me, I'm going to close my share screen because I think there's one more place I can look, just to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. Okay.
There's someone typing in the chat that I think they want you to see that.
Let's see here. They're in the chat box asking. Okay, let's see here. Thank you for pointing out the chat. So Chrissy's asking, so what threshold should we generally use? Like if the second city is roughly half the population or more, there's no primate. But generally, if the largest city is around 3 times larger than the second, it may be a primate city. So Chrissy, the way you kind of think about it, do you understand what exponential means? What is exponential? It's at least more than double, right, than the other size, okay? So when we talk about exponential size or growth, it means that it's at least twice, if not more. It's more than the other one. So yes, the second city is generally less than half of the largest city to be qualified as it. And so that makes it a primate city. Okay. Good question. Good question. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to sharing the screen so we can all see this together. There we go. I'll put the chat box here in the bottom. All right. Are there any vocabulary terms that don't make sense to you?
It doesn't make sense, but what exactly is the importance of us understanding the sea surface temperature?
Say the first part, you kind of dropped out. At first, I just heard understanding sea surface temperature.
I was just saying that I don't really understand. Well, not that I don't understand. Like, what exactly do you want us to know about sea surface temperature?
Okay, so it could be something to the effect of, you know what the definition is, okay? And I might say, or ask you, which of the following affects hurricanes, in the Caribbean, right? And so you have those charts of, of the different hurricanes and the chapter 3 boxes that you see. It would be something like, that's pretty much what it would be, right? So sea surface temperature is obvious, but we know that if sea surface temperatures are higher, that can fuel hurricanes, okay? And there's a whole set of explanations that, are in those boxes explaining, Hurricane Ivan or whatever went through that that were affected by the result of higher sea surface temperatures. It's also a part of the conversation that comes out of climate change. Do y'all know the difference between Columbian encounter and Columbian exchange? It shows up twice, each of them, both in chapters 3 and in chapters 4. And an encounter kind of alludes to two different groups of people meeting. Who would they be?
The European Americans.
Yeah, or the indigenous populations, right? Whether they're Mayans or Aztecs or Incans, those were all considered the first Columbian encounter. Now, what about the exchange?
The goods that they bartered, exchanged.
Exactly. Very good. So it's important to keep those two definitions distinguished in your head as well, okay? Let me see here. Something that we talked more about. Is everyone familiar with what a TO map is at the very top of the vocabulary list? Would it be considered an ancient or a modern map?
Ancient.
Ancient.
Okay, what were some of the unique characteristics of a TO map?
It had what it seemed like to be a cross in the middle of it, and I forgot what was the center of it.
The Holy Land, right? Jerusalem, right? Because it's in this cross. So it's coming out of the tradition when the church and the monarchs were hand in hand, right? So the center of the world would be where? Jerusalem, okay? So there's that, but then the top of the TO map, where was that location? Where was it looking toward?
East.
East, towards Asia, right? Towards the east. And then what was surrounding the TO map?
The
the ocean, right? Water. And also you notice that the TL map is kind of flat looking, right? So it's that it feeds into that notion that the earth was flat, right? And if you kept going in one direction, you might go off the edge, right? So that's how early Europeans thought about the world. And it was really connected to and grounded in their Judeo-Christian faith and how Jerusalem fits the center of that worldview, okay? Very good. What are, would y'all be able to describe first, second, and third world as well as fourth world? Or at least identify it in a multiple choice question? First of all, let me ask this. When were these terms used politically? There was a particular war in the 20th century between the United States and the Soviet Union. And that's underneath fourth world there. It was in the Cold War era, okay?
Well, the second world definition is a term popularly used during or before the Cold War. So
Yep.
is the first world before the Cold War?
No, what came about, what I'm getting at with the Cold War, is that first, second, third, and fourth worlds were used to kind of frame or divide the world up accordingly to whether or not you were part of the capitalist West with the United States and European, Japanese, and Australian allies, or were you part of the second world, the countries that were associated with the Soviet Union, all those communist countries. So it was really capitalism in the first versus communism in the second world. The third world were the really economically deprived countries that were being carved up by both first and second worlds, right, for their political influence.
Mm-hmm.
So the United States would try to influence, well, let's just use a good example. It's not in your book, but I'll bring this up as an example. The country of Vietnam. We were at war in Vietnam between North and South, right? The United States was in the South. The communists were in the North. And that was a clear example of how first and second worlds were trying to carve up the world in the third world, okay? But third world also has a connotation of being economically deprived or lesser developed in the language that we don't really use anymore, but that was the language used back in the 20th century. The fourth world is that world that's sort of invisible on the political map, but is very present. So you may have indigenous peoples who live in Brazil or in sub-Saharan Africa, in the jungles or in the interior. And they're not politically connected to this Cold War at all, but they certainly exist, right? So that was known as the fourth, or almost like forgotten world in those periods, in that Cold War period of the 20th century. Nowadays, even though in the news you still hear journalists say, well, this is a third world country or this is a first world problem, right? From a social science perspective, we're not using those terms anymore. So if I were to publish a paper, I wouldn't use that terminology. Instead, what we're using are terms like the global north and the global south, okay? So the global north represents what kind of countries in the 21st century? Wealthy or economically deprived? Industrialized or non-industrialized?
Wealthy and industrialized.
Exactly. The global north is the wealthy. And the easy way to remember this, when you think about the map, if you think about where the world's wealthiest countries are, the United States, Canada, Western Europe, Japan, South Korea, they're all located north or south of the equator. The north of the equator, right? So that's how you think global north is wealthy country. If you're south, for the most part, not evenly distributed, of course, around the world, but south of the equator, you have the much poorer economies of sub-Saharan Africa, parts of South, America. Of course, you have poorer countries north of the equator, but they also classify as global south in the sense that you might have like Yemen or places in the Middle East or in South or Central Asia. But the easy way to kind of distinguish all of that is the global north represents wealthy, industrialized countries, okay? Now, a very funny kind of true-false scenario is the country of Australia, which is south of the equator. True or false? Is it a global north country?
True.
True, it is. Why? Because it's developed and it's wealthy, right? Okay. And the other term that we're using in framework of globalization and the economies is this NIC, the NICs, which are the newly industrializing countries. So instead of saying that someone is a third world country, which does third world have a positive or negative connotation to it? I mean, if somebody says, oh, nice to meet you, Danielle. I understand you live in a third world country.
That's negative.
Negative. It doesn't show much progress, right? But if I looked at Shayna there and I said, oh, nice to meet you, Shayna. I understand your country is a newly industrializing country, meaning you've arrived, right? You're working towards something better. So when we do research, we try to use the language in a very constructive way and not feed into the old stereotypes of first and third that we use kind of pejoratively and almost colonially, right? And you don't know how many people I come across in my field of work and here at the international office at CGE, or the Center for Global Engagement at CSU, and they talk about, a parent saying, I'm not going to let my kid go to a third world country. Well, okay, that's positive. But what if your kid wanted to go to the country of Ghana and do a service project because they're newly industrializing so we can help them along? That has a much, more constructive, explanation around it, right? Okay, so good. Everyone's okay on those terms? Any further questions on it, or you're not sure still?
Wait, is this the same as BRICS, or did I just label that wrong?
Well, BRICS is connected to newly industrializing countries, okay? But BRICS is an acronym that simply means Brazil, Russia,
Oh yeah.
India, China,
And then
South Africa, right?
Okay.
And of course, my love of Brazil, so I love BRICS because Brazil comes first, right? So, right. So I'm really fond of that term. So it's simply an acronym to show that these are the new large economies of the newly industrializing world. Okay, these are the ones emerging quickly, and they're providing a significant economic challenge toward the global north. Meaning, where is all your stuff made? China, right? Brazil's an economic powerhouse these days, even though it has the poverty of the favelas, but it's an economic powerhouse. And obviously you have India, which is a high-tech industry field, right? Do this is really, really fascinating. I do weird things like read where things are made all the time. And I got some, have you ever heard of Prilosec, right? That's kind of like an antacid thing, right? Because my son was having he's having like ulcer stuff. And so I got the Kroger, over in Macon we have Kroger, but I got the Kroger generic brand of it, okay? Do you know where it's made? It's made in India.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so I got curious. So I went to Walmart and looked at the generic brand of Prilosec there. Their Prilosec is made either in Israel, if it's the hard tablet, but if it's a capsule, it's made in India. So this is, that kind of stuff amazes me. So yeah, India is one of the BRICS, and now they're producing pharmaceuticals that we're consuming in the United States, especially over-the-counter stuff. That's just extra trivia for you. You know, you can use that at Thanksgiving. You'll sound really smart. You know, did you know that India? You know. Okay. Are you all comfortable with? That I am so sorry. I just realized this. I typed this wrong. It's NGOs, not NOGs. I don't even know what a NOG is. NGOs, non-governmental organizations. Those are nonprofits that work and they help with charity and development work where governments don't play a role, right? Like, for example, remember in the favela lecture, I talked about working with some non-governmental organizations in the favelas that provide education for that girl and her grandmother and her aunt, right? That's an NGO kind of thing, okay? So I apologize, it's not supposed to be NOGs, it's supposed to be NGOs, my bad. Okay, this one is, I think, hard for some students to get their head around. It's called the space-time compression. It's very theoretical, okay? So can anyone take a stab at explaining the space-time compression definition?
That's when like we were able to travel faster as far as like by train or by plane.
Absolutely, yeah. And so what is it doing when you travel by plane or train or car? What are you doing?
We're covering more ground.
Covering more ground in more time or less time?
Less time.
Right. So time, space-time compression simply means that transportation development has allowed us to move over farther geographical distances, in other words, geographical space, in a more compressed time frame or a faster time frame. Right? So, you know, can you imagine, you know, 100 years ago in, you know, the 1920s, how long would it take to take the train from Columbus to Atlanta? Maybe 3 hours? Slow train, stopping here and there, right? Well, this is going to catch me because in Atlanta, it can still take 3 hours if it's rush hour, right? But if there's no traffic, how long would it take you to get to downtown Atlanta from downtown Columbus today? Going the speed limit now, mind you. What, 90 minutes, right? That's an example of time space compression when you know, or space-time compression, when you have halved the amount of time it takes to go over that territory through a new form of transportation. Think about this. It would take, in the days of the Mayflower, 3 to 4 weeks for a boat with sails to cross the Atlantic Ocean, assuming that the winds were working in their favor, right? Now you can fly from Atlanta on a Delta or a British Airways flight to London. How long does it take to fly from Atlanta to London, do you think, these days? How many hours? 6 hours. Shayna knows. She must have done it, right? Did you fly to London, Shayna? No? You're right. It's about 6 to 7 hours. And that's, you know, it takes that much time to drive to Orlando, right? You know, so you have, again, space-time compression based on technological advancement in transportation. Now we can take that space-time compression idea one step further. Right now, we're all on Zoom together, okay? Everyone's in a different location, right? We're traveling across geographic space pretty much instantaneously through technological innovations through the internet, right? We are compressing space and the amount of time to communicate, whereas, you know, 100 years ago, we would not be doing this. We would be sending letters or maybe a telegram of some sort, right? But this kind of connectivity would not have existed. So in addition to the transportation, globalization has also facilitated more space-time compression through communications, such as the internet, okay? Right. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. Are you all then comfortable, as we're talking about globalization, since we're on it, discussing economic, political, and cultural globalizations? Yeah? So if I asked you, a company outsources its labor to China, is this a form of economic, political, or cultural globalization? What would it be? What do you think, Ashley? You're looking pensive. Yeah. Would it be economic? Okay. Yeah. You're oh yeah, it's breaking up on you. Sorry. It's okay. No worries. So it would be economic. What if I threw in an example of the South Korean boy band BTS? Oh, Shayna's getting really excited now, right? Would they be considered more political, more economic, or more cultural globalization? Shayna, what do you think?
I would say cultural.
It would be cultural, right? I mean, of course, there's some economics because they're making money, right? But it's cultural, right? The fact that you can get 20,000 screaming girls over a Korean band that's not speaking in English, in the United States, that's a cultural phenomenon, right? So, so definitely all that there, okay? Let's see. Just make sure that everyone's following me, okay? I've been calling on the same few faces because their faces are popping up more often than not. Kevin, do you have any questions about any of the terms or figures that you might have looked at over the weekend?
The one below FTZ, syncretic religions, I guess.
Syncretic religions. What are, ooh, that's a very mysterious one, isn't it? What are syncretic religions? And there's a hint because there's a word below it. Are these, well, basically, these are more tribalistic religions that came from Western Africa that were brought over through imported slavery, okay? So when we think about voodoo as a religion, and there are other forms of voodoo throughout the Americas, even one called candomblé in Brazil, but the most popular one that we know of is voodoo. We think of Haiti, maybe even New Orleans, right? Because there is still, a voodoo cultural presence there. These were practiced religions that were brought over from Western Africa that had to operate underneath the surface of Catholicism because the Catholic Church and its colonial rulers would not permit another religion. So syncretic religions were that kind. So how would you, can anyone, like, based on the textbook definition, kind of break down how the vocabulary term is explained? That's an example that I gave you, Kevin, okay? So what is the actual definition? And there's a glossary in the back of your book if you can't find it. And it will probably be on
Religion, beliefs and practices created from multiple religious traditions.
Exactly. So you have this tradition of some animistic, or, well, I shouldn't use animistic because that's a kind of technical term, but religions that were not Judeo-Christian, didn't believe in a Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Virgin Mary, or anything like that, non-Christian, okay? But when people from Africa were forced over into slavery, they wanted to still practice their original religions. But the slave owners said, no, you have to become Christian or Catholic. So then the syncretic religion pops up in that they're now praying to Mary, but it's really a spiritual goddess underneath the surface, right? Or they're praying to a particular Catholic saint, but it really is another religious deity or god or spirit from West Africa. So it played this dual role of pacifying the slave owners and the colonial rulers, the Catholic Church, while still staying true to their cultural roots and tribes, right? But even within that, you see the mixture of some Western African religions from, say, present-day Senegal, or maybe present-day Ghana or Nigeria, kind of mixing together over here in the Caribbean, right? And that combination of those original religions from Africa combined with the superficial overlay of Catholicism created new things like voodoo, and where they're actually praying to original spirits from West Africa, but it looks like they're praying to Mary or Peter or Paul or any of the other saints or Jesus or something, right? Okay, does that make sense, Kevin? Okay, so a good way that I might say this, you know, in terms of a possible question is, it could be true or false. Is voodoo a syncretic religion? Yes, right? True, right? Or it could be that, you know, I might list some religions, and if you know what syncretic means, you would be able to identify that voodoo is a syncretic religion where the others may not be. Okay, good. Chrissy, what about you? Do you have any questions? Christy, what about you? Oh, okay. I see Chrissy's coming up now with a question. So one question I have for the exam is how much time is allotted to take the test itself? Honestly, you should be able to finish the exam nonstop in an hour, 15 minutes max if you take your time. But you know, I would say an average of an hour, really. But if anybody has reasonable or special accommodations in the class and they need time and a half, I can sort that out with them individually because I know there are a couple people who do. Okay. What about Christy Grainer? Do you have any thoughts or questions about any of the material? Carson? Ashley, you flipped the page over, so there must be something there.
Yeah, well, first, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The first question I have is sustainable development. That's one of the definitions I couldn't find in the back of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious if we could get an understanding on that term.
Absolutely. And I'm going to also tell you where it is in the textbook for just referencing sake, okay? 1 second here.
I also was looking up definitions very late, so I could have easily just skipped through it.
No, that's okay. That's all right. So if you were to go to page 22, there's actually a term sustainability. So these things are kind of closely related to one another, okay? But sustainable development, in my own terminology, simply means that there are forms of economic development that work in a sustainable manner to uphold and protect the environment and minimize human impact, okay?
So pretty much trying to keep the land as it is with also trying to grow it as a city in so many words. So you're not going to take away too much of the land itself.
Correct, or what you can do to protect what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be only land. There could be sustainable development with our oceans, right? Trying to find ways of minimizing plastic use so that we don't have plastic polluting our oceans or our rivers or lakes. You could also have sustainable development that looks at climate change and finding new ways of creating cars that have less of a fossil fuel imprint, right? Instead of burning gas, maybe they're hybrid or maybe they're electric. You could have new forms of electricity that don't depend on coal. So that could be in the form of solar or wind power, right? So sustainable development is a really broad umbrella term that looks at new forms of economic development and new forms of infrastructure that minimize an impact on Mother Nature or our planet's environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so technically it's like going green. Like we're gonna recycle more, we're gonna clean.
It's completely
recycle,
going green. Yeah.
Okay.
It's completely, you've just said it much better than me. You succinctly put it. You should be the professor of the night, right? Yes, it's going green.
If no one else has another question, could you just explain for the Asphalto and the Maro? I know they're two different locations of the Brazil in this case study we had. So when you ask in the back of it for the case study section, how would you explain the Asphalto and the Maro to a friend unfamiliar with the urban Brazil? Would you explain it as one is kind of, this sounds bad, but developed, and the other one is non-developed, trying to find its way to develop and trying to, or?
You're close. You're on the right track with that. So let's do it this way. So asfalto in Portuguese means what in English?
Asphalt.
Asphalt, right? Or concrete, right? Too, right? Okay. And then this word, you said moro, but it's actually, and you shouldn't have to know this, but I just want to help you all out. Morro is mojo, okay? All right? That's just Portuguese particulars. Don't worry if you don't remember it. But the mojo is the Portuguese word for what? Remember from the case study?
Is it monkey?
Well, that was the name of the place, but
Oh.
it means the hill, right? Monkey Hill. Mojo means the hill, okay? And in Rio de Janeiro, a lot of the favelas are on hills. That's why they call the favela, by slang terms, mojo, right? So the people who live in the favelas often identify themselves as separate from the formal city, where you have development, you have urban planning, you have equal access to water and sewage and electricity, all the stuff that we take for granted as being a formal city. The people living in the slum up on the hillside, or the favela on the hillside, differentiate them as saying, oh, well, that's the asphalto, the concrete land, right? Because that's where they have the real development. And we are on the mojo, or on the hill, struggling without development. That's kind of what the two different things mean, okay? So that's what I'm getting at with that case study question, just so you have in your head that there are two different kinds of urban experiences within the same city. People who live in the developed part or the planned part, and others who live on the mojo or in the favela who don't have the same access to development.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
You are welcome. And that actually connects to another set of terms too, informal or formal and informal sectors or economies. People who live in the mojo, are they part of the formal or informal sector / economy?
The informal?
Why is that? What does the informal mean?
In so many terms is like they don't have like an economic standard. They don't really are taxed. They don't follow government standards on businesses, living expenses, and things like that. It's more of like, I call it like a family base. It's like whatever you make is kind of what you get, and then you deal with what you have to.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's kind of like a shadow economy, isn't it? It sits in the shadow of the real economy, but you're not part of that real economy. So you're working in this little separate world, right? Or living in this world, right? Very good. And so the formal one is exactly the opposite. So all of us more than likely participate in the formal sector or economy. I get a paycheck, it gets direct deposited. I pay my taxes into Social Security and local and state taxes. At the end of the year, I file income taxes, right? And out of that, because I pay taxes, because you all pay taxes, my kids go to public school. That's being paid for. We drive on streets that are paid for by what? Taxes. Or go over bridges, right? Paid by taxes. That kind of thing, right? And if you're not paying into that, you're not really a recipient of those same benefits either, right? So that's part of the difference between the asfalto and the mojo altogether. Very good, good question. All right. Any other questions in the chat or throughout this? So it's about 9 o'clock, but I am free for another 15, 20 minutes for y'all, okay?
On the definition, cocaine capitalism.
Uh-huh.
I
That
know
just sounds sexy, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. I know what the definition is, but as far as the test being multiple choice and true or false, are we gonna be asked like, is a specific city or
Well,
place?
tell me, no, it'll be probably more tied to the definition. But do you want to share the definition for the rest of the group if they're not sure what it is?
Yes, cocaine capitalism is a name given to the large drug trade in Central and South America.
Absolutely. So they are business people, right? They're making money. All right. I want to push you one step further, Danielle. Would cocaine capitalism be operating in the formal or informal sector?
Both.
Really?
More so in the informal.
All right. Do you think that the drug lords are paying taxes on this?
Absolutely.
Claiming it? No. So they're probably setting up like fake shell companies or something, right? That's where you're thinking about the formal, but that realistically it operates in the informal sector much more because it's, street drugs.
Okay.
And lots of weapons, which don't often take place in the stock market. So.
Okay.
Good. All right, is everyone comfortable with the demographic transition model? If I were to put that graphic in a question and ask you to explain or at least identify what's happening in the different, zones or phases, would you be able to do that? Now, the demographic transition model, I believe is it chapter 1? 2? It's getting late in the evening for me. I'm starting to forget. I think it's chapter 2.
Is that the that was Mexico City where it started out one way and then it grew as it went?
No, that's the Latin American urban model. Okay. Yeah, sorry, that's a slightly different model, but let's go to the demographic transition model. And it will be on page 30 of the paperback book, but it's also figure 2.8.
Is this the one that has to do with population?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So do you want to build on that, or anybody else want to build on that idea about population? Shana, have you thought about becoming a geographer?
No, I did take like a couple classes for it in high school, but
We have a minor, in geography. Talk to me if you're interested. You seem like you're like right into the pulse of it.
thank you. But I believe this is the one where it shows like the increase and decrease in a certain population, right?
Mm-hmm. Right,
Yeah.
right. So you have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. There it is. Yeah, there it is. Extreme close-up of the map. Is everyone familiar with this? So what's happening as you go from stages? So in stage 1, you have realistically high population or high birth rate, okay? A lot of babies being born, but a high death rate. A lot of people dying early, okay? So you're recycling or reproducing the population quickly. People born, they live, they die. People born, they live, they die. They keep just doing that over and over again. But your population levels are really high because there's a lack of education, there's a lack of healthcare, there's a lack of government programming that explains how to do family planning and stuff like that. And you also have more of a rural society. A rural society meaning people live in the countryside. So what happens when you live in the countryside? Do you have more or less kids?
More.
More. Why? They need to do what?
Work.
They need to work, raise the food, find the food, right? Survival, right? So that's stage 1. High birth rate, high death rate, rural, okay? Stage 2, you see that the birth rate remains high, but the death rate starts to kind of go down, okay? And that's because there is an increase in medical advancement or access to medicine, access to education and healthcare, and you see a slight trend towards urbanization. The reason why urbanization matters in population growth or not is that over time, the more people that end up living in cities for long periods tend to have fewer children because space is less, it's more expensive to live in the cities, and kids need to go to school, do this, do that, you know, it becomes expensive. So you see, and also women are working in the workforce more likely than in the village or wherever, right? Where they might have just been tending to the crops. So you have a change in lifestyle in stage 2 that starts to grow over time. So with that comes more access to healthcare and education and women in the workforce. It's not even workforce labor. They're in the workforce, but also being paid significantly less than men, okay? So you have this all happening, which means that the death rate starts to go down because people are living longer, but the birth rate stays high. So the population starts to do what? It grows even more, okay? All right, okay. So you have those two things happening at once. Stage 3, you see a widening of that gap between the number of people living longer and the number of people that are starting to have fewer children, okay? And so you still have this period of time where you have a lot of people doing that. They haven't died yet. So the population is still growing. It's almost like, you know, when a car is going pretty fast and it slams on the brake and you have the inertia and things are still moving forward even though the car is stopping, right? It's that kind of inertia. A lot of people, you know, living and dying, but starting to live longer, starting to have fewer, but because the population size is already large, it's still moving forward while it's still starting to contract. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so here you start to see what's known as the natural increase occur, meaning the natural increase of the overall population based on the two, high birth rate and or I guess high to lowering birth rate and the lower death rate now, while the population is still large. If you keep going through these different stages, at some point, you're going to find that the population either stabilizes or actually starts to decrease because people are living longer and having fewer children, right? So you have a lot of people living longer, but not enough people being born to replace those that are starting to die off. And there are countries like Japan, Sweden, Italy, that are all in negative population growth, which means declining faster than they can reproduce to keep the population going. Japan's really interesting on that front because this has been a problem for quite a while, and they're a really important, they're the third largest economy in the world, and they are major producers of electronics and cars and all that. And Japan is trying to resolve that problem by creating artificial intelligence, robotics, to supplement the labor that they're not going to have with a declining population, which is why Japanese cars are always smart cars, right? That's just a sideline to that. So you get that, so you understand that kind of explanation of the model. Now, if I were to give you a scenario and say country whatever has high birth rates, high death rates, and as a result, you know, is more rural, which of the stages would you choose? 1, 2, 3, or 4, or maybe 5? Which one would you choose?
1.
1, right? So what I want you to do is know what these different stages mean, and then I'll give you a kind of a hypothetical example and you apply it to that. Okay?
Aren't they technically first world, second world, and third world countries also?
It
Like,
could be if we're in the Cold War, right? If we're in the Cold War, they would be. What would we explain in the 21st century? Would they be global North or global South? if it were stage one, global north or global south?
South.
Right. What about if it were stage four?
North.
North, exactly. Or stage five, north, right? You're on the right track. You're thinking right along those alleyways. Yep. That's good, Kevin.
Are you also going to include like charts slash graphs for like the demographic transition model? Because I remember back in like econ, there was like almost a pyramid for like stage one to show like it represents like how the model goes by the stages of obviously. So at the bottom at the base, it's more infant like births and all that, but then it gets smaller at the top, which is like the top of the
Yeah,
pyramid where
you're talking about the population pyramids. We haven't really studied population pyramids, and we're going to get to those a little bit later on. So I won't be showing population pyramids, but I will be showing this graphic from figure 2.8 in your test, okay? And then I'll ask you a question about the different stages. As we get into Europe and other places where you see population growth or decline, then we'll start looking at the population pyramids. But yeah, we will get to that. And that sometimes they're called population pyramids or demographic pyramids. But yeah, we'll look at those later on, Kevin.
Okay.
But you're on the right track with all of that. Let's see here. What about question 3? That model will probably be on your test. Do you remember this model? It would be in the urban geography section from chapter, well, it was 3 and 4, but one of the earlier ones that you looked at. I can actually, if you bear with me, I'll go into Cougar View and I'll show you the chart, okay? Because it's not in your textbook. So let's go here. Let's see. Someone trying to get in the room? Let's see. Couldn't tell if somebody was trying to get into our room or not. All right, so if we go to content, let me just go to the PowerPoints here themselves, and I'll go to the PDF of it. Oh, why is chapter 3 and 4 not showing yet? Should be there, not there. I'll make sure that that's corrected tonight. That's weird, they're sitting there. Let me go to the teaching side of it, okay? Hold on. Why is it not showing? They were showing just a week ago. I'll tell you what, let me go to this other source that I pulled it from. Bear with me. Ta-da, here it is. Okay, so this was in the PowerPoint presentation. Do you remember it?
Sort of.
Okay, and I did kind of like an explanation of Mexico City. So this is a very typical example of a Latin American city by design. If you were to look at it on the map, it would tend to follow this kind of development pattern, okay? So the way it's broken down is that the CBD, which is known as the Central Business District, is the downtown where all the old colonial business and banking and government power resides, as well as the big cathedral, okay, which they show up here. And I use a similar picture in the PowerPoint slides, okay? Next to it is often known as the market, where you have a lot of people buying and selling goods from their little mom and pop shops, but there could be some shopping areas there as well, okay? So there you have that kind of all connected together in the same way you might think of a downtown as being the place for business and shopping can occur too, okay? Connecting this downtown colonial downtown market and business and government center, you have this thing called the spine, which is simply a corridor, you know, with a large street or something that is flanked by, you know, newer multinational businesses that connect to more of a park-like atmosphere, a big area of green space called the mall. Don't think of it as a shopping mall. This is, you're familiar with the mall in Washington, D.C., that big open green space, right? Right, that's what we're talking about, like the mall in Washington, D.C., a big open public green space. Along this spine, and this is one of the important features of the Latin American city, the elite people, the wealthy people, do not live in the suburbs, okay? They live along the spine, connecting the downtown and the big parks, okay? So, whereas in the United States, wealthy people tend to move out of the city, right? In Latin America, it's the opposite. They live in the middle of the city, and the poorer people live on the edge of the city, okay? And from there, you have these different zones, like a zone of maturity, which is like a middle class neighborhood, okay? You have a zone of what they call in situ accretion, which is kind of a transition zone between middle class and really poor, okay? And then a couple other corridors that connect right into the marketplace from the poorer areas called the disamenity zone, or I guess corridors that connect poverty, people who are really poor who need to work in the marketplace, and they go in and out that way, okay? Mexico City is a classic example of how this is, okay? All right, and that's when I broke down the model in the PowerPoint presentation. If you go back and watch that video, you'll see that I always have this particular, can you see my mouse move? Yeah, I have this particular model with each of the different pictures as I explained it, okay? So I'm not gonna ask you to remember those photos from Mexico City. That would be impossible to do, right? But what I would like you to know in terms of this model, besides knowing it's Mexico City, is that if I asked you where would, you know, the government and colonial business be, or the central cathedral be located? Where would you guess?
Market.
The market, or really more likely where? The CBD.
Yeah.
I might even ask you, what does CBD mean? What is it? Central Business District, okay? So, and then, where do the middle class reside? Which zone? Is it zone of maturity, a zone of elite residential sector? And you just sort of break it out that way. So it's just working with the actual model to kind of explain where would the poorest people live in the city? Would it be in the zone of maturity, or the zone of peripheral squatter settlements, or the zone of in situ accretion? Where would it be? Unmute yourself if you're talking.
Oh, the squatter settlements?
Exactly. Okay, so that's how I'm going to use the graphic that way. I think Kevin, was it you that asked me if I was going to use graphs and stuff like that? Yeah, so that's just another example of how I would do that, okay? All right.
So that graph is basically like the Hunger Games.
And how so?
How all the very wealthy, high-strung people are in the city, and then they have all the different sectors of, they go down the line to semi-rich, not so rich, and then like the
Yeah.
poor.
Yeah. Right. So yeah. So in essence, the mall, the spine in this area, this is the capital, right?
Yes.
And up here, it's like District 12 or something, right?
Yes.
Exactly like that. Yes. That's a really good analogy. You're using spatial analogies, special, but also spatial analogies, right? You are thinking like a geographer in terms of abstracting geographic space. Well done, you. That's great. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, back over here to our study guide. Anything else before we leave for now, for forever hold your peace, right?
Will we have sort of like the case studies on here? We'll have like a section where we need to write something out, or is it all is multiple choice?
It'll all be multiple choice. So I'll contextualize it for you and you just sort of pick it out of it, what it means, okay?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No essays on this one or short answers on this one, no. It's an 1101 class. I don't want to throw curveballs like that at you at the first test.
So we gotta download the lockdown browser. Is the link gonna be on CSU or does it just automatically take you to it?
Are you working on a computer or are you going to work from like an iPad or a
Either
Chromebook or something?
it whatever is gonna be like the easier way, I guess.
Okay. Well, if it's like on an iPad, you can probably go into your app stores, whatever you're using, and find it there. Or and I'll double check right now before I go back to the house. But if it's something that you need to download on your computer, I'll confirm that. Sometimes you may have it already and you don't know it, and when the lockdown kicks in, it just kicks in, right?
Okay.
But I'll do a little bit of homework, and you all also do homework on your end, okay?
Okay.
All right.
You mentioned the test, does it open on Friday or does it close on Friday?
It closes on Friday. It will open tomorrow, maybe middle of the morning or so.
What time will it close on Friday? Because that was the day I was planning on taking it no matter what.
I'll have it closed like at 11:59 p.m.
Oh, okay.
I'll let it go all the way through.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can plan your time out accordingly. I try to like when we're working asynchronously, meaning not live all the time. I try to provide as much evening opportunity because people have different schedules, and if you're like me, you may have kids at home doing schoolwork during the daytime online, and you can't do it then, so you have to do stuff at night. So we're going to have a lot of flexibility with this. So it'll be through Friday night.
Perfect.
And I'll most likely give you all like a full 2-hour window or something like that, even though it says it's going to take an hour to hour and 15 minutes. That way, just, you have the time. Because it's possible that, you're in the middle of taking a test and then your kid runs through and suddenly you're breaking up a fight or something, You have to get back.
If I fail, can I get like a plus 40 points for my participation in class?
Plus 40 points.
Yeah, because
Well-
if I make a 60, I gotta bring up to like a 70.
Well, that would have to be done in the informal sector, Caillou. I couldn't report that now, could I? There is extra credit that you can do, right? You can get up to 15 extra points at the end of the semester for your final grade.
Yeah, but I'm a little nervous because if I fail my test, then I'm just going.
I tell you what, I understand being nervous, especially if you've not been back to school in a while. Listen, just take it as it is. Take it slowly. If you feel like you've run into trouble with it, that's when you come and talk to me, okay? And we work through this together. Okay, so don't let this be the make or break of you at this point, okay? It's just a starting point. Learning's a journey. We got to start somewhere, and this is where we are, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. And trust me, I'm very empathetic towards those sort of things. Anyone else for the greater good?
Well, it's not about the exam, but I did send you an email like 4 days ago about the ILC Japanese film Shall We Dance. I wasn't
Yes.
able to actually participate, but I
Yes.
didn't know if I watched it on my own and I still provided some sort of feedback, like a paper, could I still?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't get back with you. I did see that over the weekend.
Okay.
It has to be the Japanese version. It can't be the American version. Okay.
Correct.
So yes, I'll let you do that.
Okay, cool.
Okay. And I'm not going to open up the drop boxes until Wednesday for uploading ILCs. Again, I just didn't want to throw new things that people felt like they had to do immediately in terms of ILC stuff when we were, with all the power outages and all that kind of stuff, and then studying for a test. So considering that you don't have to have it done immediately anyway, that'll open up later this week, okay?
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
fine, yes.
Is that technically what the ILC due date is on our course? Is that just the open of the ILCs, or do we have to have all our ILCs done by then?
Which one are we looking at here? So I can pull up the,
I have it for October 9th, but I could
Mhm.
have miswritten that.
It's okay, let's look it up. Let's look it up, okay? Let's go to course orientation. And we'll look
Because
at schedule.
for your schedule, it printed out funny.
Yeah,
so
because
I retyped it. That's why I could be wrong.
okay, so when you see, like, for example, where are we here? We are already past, oh my gosh, we're almost October, aren't we? It's kind of scary. So you see right here, I have here Tuesday. So this is the time period for tomorrow's exam, right? Okay. Theoretically, on the 23rd, this is when you're supposed to start doing reading in Europe, okay? Obviously, I've given you the whole week to start reading it vis-a-vis whenever you're doing your test, okay? So do your test first and then get into reading, okay? All right, so that's just a period of time. Next week, we'll have our quiz 3, that's on the day of, right? Okay, and then when you're looking at your first ILC, this is the date that it will be due, okay? And basically, I just put that in there, and it's kind of, it's not really a hard deadline, folks. It's a midterm, so I know that you're keeping on track with getting your ILCs done, okay? Because I've had the experience before where my students in Geography 1101 waited to do all 3 the last week and a half, and they couldn't squeeze it in, and plus with all the space limitations with social distancing, there are certain things you may not be able to get done. And I just don't want to put you all into that. So it's really it's a measurement of trying to help you with some time management, really, okay? So if you get it around that time, I'm fine, okay? I'm pretty flexible on that, okay? The real hard deadlines that I have are the dates of our exams and most likely our quizzes, and then a few other assignments which may get meandered here and there depending on what's going on. But the quizzes and the tests are the real hard deadlines.
So with the films, do we write a summary of it?
Yeah, it could be a summary of it, or maybe what's even easier for you, and this is really what I'm more interested in, is there something in the film that struck you as most interesting, or that you learned the most about, or made you think about something? Write it in that kind of way, as if it's a reflection journal for yourself. You could actually say that I completely disagree with what was in the film, and this is why. You know, that's okay. As long as, you know, it's a grounded, solid reflection, you know, that's okay. But it just tells me that what you're watching is not, you know, instead of regurgitating what the movie is about or the film's about, there's one little piece of it that was meaningful to you, whether you agreed or disagreed with it.
Okay, so how many pages do you think would be necessary for that?
Just one.
Okay,
Short and sweet.
thank you.
Yep.
With the ILCs, I had a really hard time. I emailed you on Sunday about going in. So the process of an ILC is technically you go to that person's website or you buy a ticket and then you have an access point into it. I'm just confused. It's my first time ever doing it, and my whole experience was horrible.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. There,
Okay.
well, you were supposed to, through the information provided on the flyer, pre-register, and then you get sent a link where you didn't have to buy the ticket. So I've actually contacted the person, Dr. Rees and Dr. Bentley. Well, Dr. Rees first. I haven't had a chance to talk to Bentley yet, to explain what happened to you, Ashley, and to see what
went through the same thing.
Who did?
Another student. I put it on discussion board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We actually went and looked, but I didn't look in the discussion board. I looked actually like through my email. I thought you meant.
Oh, that's fine. Because I put it on the discussion board first just to see if someone would pop up, and they said they had the same problem. They bought the ticket as well the day that you mentioned it, and then never got an email receiving a link. And I know from your announcement, when you clicked it, it popped up as a PDF
Yeah. And
So
there wasn't the link within the PDF that they sent me.
the only thing I saw directed me straight to their website where I purchased a ticket, and that's how I purchased the ticket. And then other
Okay.
than that, I got a confirmation
Okay.
with a purchase number, and then I contacted the person immediately when I couldn't find how to access it. But I haven't got anything back on that. So I will submit a thing on there.
Okay. Yeah. Explain to them that you're a Columbus State student and you were not supposed to be charged.
Okay.
That you were supposed to go through a different link and it was an error. And
Okay.
ask them to give your money back because I don't want you being out of pocket for that money, especially since you didn't see it.
Well, and that looked really interesting. That's why I jumped on it so last minute. So,
I'll get some information and maybe Wednesday before I get back to you on that, but go ahead and request. I'm trying to see where did you post this?
you go all the way up, not in the intros. So if you go all the way up to the discussion, and then go just the discussion on the top, not the introduction, because that's the introduction. So discussion posts.
Okay.
Go ahead and click on that, and then, oh, you don't have it.
I don't see it. That's why I was lost earlier. I was looking through email, I think. I didn't.
Yeah. So for me as a student, when you go in, you do obviously Kruger review, geography, and then I did a set communication, discussion, and you have, it's called the muddiest point. Do you have additional questions about the course, assignments, or activities? Do you need clarification on something?
There you are. Okay.
Yeah, and then the other student posted with me, said that they had the same exact problem, that they bought the program.
So it's Christy too, right? Is Christy still with us? I see her on here.
Yeah, it says she's on here.
Hey, Christy, can you hear us? Oh, maybe she doesn't hear.
Oh yeah, she just posted.
Okay. Well, Christy, if you can hear too, I want the two of you to write back to where you got the tickets to request a refund, okay? That's a starting point. And I will see where, I've been told that the link should work through Thursday for students. Dr. Stacy Blursch from Environmental Science told me that today when I was asking around about whether or not other people have problems. And she didn't have anybody in her group that had a problem. But let me find out what we can do to get it for free for you. And then if you can find out who you're supposed to contact for refund, I will also email that person to verify that you should be getting a refund for you, okay?
Okay, it did say there's no refunds available on the sheet, but I'll just put in there to the organizer that I'm a CSU student and the information did not pop up correctly. That is why I purchased a ticket for the event.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, nothing got sent to me
Correct.
to the event. I'll just say it that way.
And even if you were a regular paying customer, if you didn't get a link, they should give you a refund. That's just.
I know it said it was open for a couple days because I saw that you could purchase a ticket for this Thursday as well. So that's why I was like, well, maybe they'll send it to me and I just have to join another date since I was a little late on the time frame. So
did you just to confirm, did you check your spam or junk mail to make sure the link didn't go there?
Yeah, I did that right away. I did that a couple times before. I mean, I searched the whole, you name it, I searched it.
You searched the universe, okay.
Yeah, pretty much. And I got the same thing. Every time it shot me back straight to a ticket purchase. It never shot me to a video link.
Okay.
To YouTube it.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk to Erin Bentley tomorrow. We have a staff meeting. She's the assistant director in my office, and she's coordinating these events for us. I'm going to ask her about this as well and who we can contact directly there. And if I get the person's name or email address, I will write them directly, and I'll copy you and Christy as well, so they know who these people are. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it stinks if you're getting charged money and you can't even get to the link. You should be charged anyway, but even on top of that, that's not right.
That's okay, but that's going to be the same process for usually the same process. You'll post something and it should have a link for us directly to be able to view it.
Right, and I'm posting them as the links are coming to me to share with you, okay?
Okay.
And normally, and this is why I'm so sorry that it's so confusing and just kind of helter-skelter, but normally we do all these things in person, right? So you just show up at the event, okay? But so now we're having to have different people with different Zoom accounts arrange these things, and then they share so it's not like one central Zoom source for everything, you know what I mean? So that's,
It's a pain. This whole school year has
yeah,
been hard to pain, and we're only 5 weeks in.
I
So.
know pandemics just suck. I can't say it any clearer than that, you know? So I hope Christy heard. She may have had to dart off or something, but I'll find out for you, okay? Did anyone else have any problems with ILCs since we're on here? Shayna? Okay,
No,
Christy, that's good.
I want to be just make sure that's different than. Okay, so today I went to the one.
The history one?
Yes, that is
Yes.
different than the ones that you are also requiring us to do, correct?
Yeah, but I'm allowing you to count that as one of the ILCs because it was international and focused.
Okay.
I saw your name there because you saw me present too, right?
Yes.
I introduced Dr. Rasher. Yeah.
Yes.
Except I had my nice jacket on at that time. I was trying to look a little more polished and dressed. But what you all don't know is that while I'm polished, I'm still wearing my Pumas. So, you know, so it's kind of misleading. But yes, you can count tonight's lecture as one of the ILCs and upload it as your paper reflection, okay?
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? No?
This is ahead of the gun, but what case study are we doing for Europe?
Well, we're starting off, the first set of slides that you'll look at is physical geography, but we're really going to focus more on Brexit
Oh,
and how the UK's exit from the European Union is causing a little bit of strife inside the UK, but also with the European Union. And in particular, we're going to do a little case study on Northern Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Because Northern Ireland is a part of the United Kingdom, but it's on the island of Ireland, which connects directly to the European Union. And the Irish are culturally one people, and they don't want to be separated with what they thought was a very blissful union. And now they're being told that, well, you're not in the EU anymore. They're not very happy. So that'll be our case study.
I liked the Brazil one.
Oh, I'm
But
glad you did. Yeah.
Also, I knew what also you were talking about because I've seen it. So that's why I was so interested in
That's right. I forgot you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, it's funny because I've actually went through that tunnel, but
Yes.
I never paid attention to the wall, obviously.
Uh-huh.
Like where you showed where the worst part of the city was, I drove right through that almost every single day.
Yep.
Which was kind of scary that that's exactly what we drove through.
You were like you're on a mission service project, right?
No, I was I don't know how to explain. I was over there for a competition.
That's right. Okay, that's right. So you were going up towards like were you going towards American Stadium in that area where all the sports?
I was up, so the stadium's here. If you kept on following the main road and then you head towards the mountain, but our hotel was on Coco Cabana.
Right, because that's where all the tourists go. Because it's
That's just where they.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, because before the Olympics, the Latin American Inter-American Games, or I guess is what it was, they were held there before the Olympics. And that's where all the sports stuff is.
Yeah,
that area.
You went there. I think there was a stadium. Wasn't there a stadium right there off the freeway that had a big long runway with 2 stadium sides on it?
Mm-hmm. That is called the Sambadrome.
Okay.
And that's where they do the carnival parade.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay,
Yeah, that's where all the carnival dancers go down. Yeah. You pay big tickets to sit up in those stands and see the parade too.
It was cool, but it was funny because you mentioned all that stuff and I Googled where I was compared to where we were. And I was like, we drove through this every single day in rush hour.
Yeah, well, that's always rush
hour there. So, but
well, as soon as this bloody pandemic is over, I have a proposal in place to take students to Brazil. So
I liked Brazil.
That is the goal. I would take people to Florida if we could get on a bus and go somewhere these days. But Brazil would be good too.
Yeah, Brazil would be fun. I liked it, and so I knew what you were talking about. That was why it was so interesting to me.
I'm
So
glad. That's
seen
good.
that. Oh, I've been through there.
And-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Very cool. Well, if there are no other questions, either related to tests or just course or CSU in general, I'll let you retire for the evening, and I'll do a little housekeeping here with Cougar View and get that, at least that lockdown browser thing going. I don't know what happened to the 2 PDFs that were up there for, you know, the case study on Mexico City, but I will dig around and see if I can find where they're hidden and repost them, okay? All right, and just shoot me an email if you're having problems. I will be here on campus tomorrow through about noon, and then I have off-campus meetings, and then I'm back on the River Park campus pretty much most of the day, and I have my office hours at River Park, you know, electronically on Google Hangouts, and then I'm here all day Thursday. But Friday, if you're waiting till the end, I know a couple of you are, take the test. I will be at a university system council meeting through Zoom, so my computer will also be locked up for about 6 hours that day. So I may not be able to see emails immediately, but I'll do my very best to get back at you. But just reach out to me if you're having any problems. I will be checking email periodically. And if I don't get back to you within a few minutes and I know that you're trying to take a test, just know that I'm in a meeting or something, but I'll work with you, okay? Okay. Well, as they say in Brazil, boa noite, or bon sono, which means sweet dreams. That they do say that to people, bon sono. Have a good night, okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, my pleasure. The most important thing is to know that we're learning. It's not to trick you out of answers. Think about this at any time. And Kaya, this is for you too, that an exam is not meant to be, to me at least, it's not a device to exclude people from going further in education. It's not a weeding out of sorts, but it's simply an exercise to test the knowledge that you've studied and learned and put it in that framework. And to me, that's a much more forward motion way of thinking, kind of like growth mindset way of thinking, as opposed to seeing exams as penalizing exclusionary devices, okay? All right, okay. You have a good night, okay?
Awesome. You too. Thank you.
All right, good night, everybody. Bye.